What you are about to witness is extremely, extremely embarrassing and also very entertaining. Let's put it that way. So I came across something very recently on the vegan thread that just immediately caught my attention. It turned into something I would have never expected. I was shocked, flexed, flabbergasted even. Any word synonymous with confuddle-duddled, that was me. And that will be you too, I'm certain. Or maybe not, it really depends on how much faith you have in the vegan community. So it started off simple, a story. Somebody was telling about their first dates with another vegan and they were just so unbelievably excited just to find out that this person had such an extreme belief that they were taken aback by this themselves. They were shocked. They had no idea that there were vegans that held this belief as well and decided to share it in the vegan thread to kind of rant about it a little bit and get some confirmation that this is not normal. Little did they know, to their surprise, they found out just how widespread this extreme belief actually was. And it lit off a light bulb in my head too, because this was the first time that I had realized how common it was too, even though I had a little bit of an inkling that it existed, but I wasn't too sure. Now I know some of you are on your edge of your seat wondering, okay, Omni King, just get to it. What is this belief? What is this magical, extreme, crazy belief that vegans hold that you haven't talked about before? Well, apparently there's a lot of vegans that genuinely hate carnivorous animals. Genuinely hate them. Do not want them to exist. And this sparked a crazy debate on this thread. And you're gonna need something delicious, non-vegan to snack on while you enjoy this video. So let's just get into it. First date with the vegan guy was odd. I finally met a vegan guy and we had our first date. I was super excited to talk about all our favorite snacks. We're venting our frustrations about the world, relating a ton, and it was great first. Then I mentioned that I work at an animal rescue and wildlife rehabilitation. I tell him my favorite animals there are the foxes, owls, and snakes. Then I mentioned that the only thing that bothers me is having to feed baby mice to the owl, but I love her nonetheless. He starts ranting about how he absolutely despises carnivorous animals. He then goes on to say, I don't think they even deserve to be rescued, with absolute disgust in his voice. And I don't think it's fair that to keep one snake alive, you have to feed it so many mice. Mice are mammals. They're so much more intelligent. Snakes don't even seem like there's much going on in their head. I hate them. They're disgusting. I like herbivorous animals way more. They can actually live in peace. Not only that, but he didn't seem to like that I mentioned one day I want land and a lot of cats, even though I said indoor cats because they're too murderous. I had no idea this type of vegan existed. I was a bit stunned at how much malice he spoke with about these animals. True carnivorous animals cannot help their biology and are essential for a healthy ecosystem. That's ecology 101. Keystone species, trophic cascades, hello? I was stunned at this man. Speciesism is not vegan, and I'm pretty sure that's what he's engaging in with this thought process. There you have it, folks. These vegans not only hate humans, but they also hate animals too. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Now, I know this sounds crazy, sounds extreme. You're like, there can't be that many people that agree with this guy, right? You would be dead wrong. There's actually quite a few. And this person's edit here, which you'll see in a moment, doesn't outline that exactly, but they outlined how much of a debate this sparked, how much this blew up, and how much of a controversy it became. And the truth is, while I said I was surprised before, the more I thought about it, the less surprised I really was. Because you gotta remember, a lot of folks in the vegan community, it's not about the animals, it's about the moral superiority of, oh, I don't eat animals, I'm morally superior to you. And that somehow carries over to the animals themselves, which, like, do they think they're better than foxes because they can eat grass and they can't? It's kind of confusing, honestly. The comments are really crazy, so that's kind of what I want to get to before I really share my 2 cents on the whole situation. So let me read this edit and we'll move on from there. Edit. This comment section imploded on itself and this post was taken away I didn't intend. The reason I posted was just for a quick vent to say, hey, I didn't realize there's a subsection of vegans that express hatred for carnivorous animals. That is strange to me and kind of blew my mind. I thought all vegans were on the same page that veganism is a human philosophy, and we probably shouldn't impose our philosophies onto non-human animals who operate completely differently than we do. Not here to argue on what is essentially the trolley problem regarding feeding rescue animals mice, especially with people who know little to nothing about rescue work. This guy said a lot more things that were hateful and cynical that I didn't include, and his tone was certainly not coming from a place of compassion. I like how she's trying to kind of justify things a little bit. You're like, oh, well, he's not representative of anything. He's just an asshole. He's just an asshole. Just want to clarify that. This has nothing to do with veganism. He's just an asshole. His tone was extremely rude, and he made a bunch of other distasteful comments about animals. He was a weirdo, end of story. You're coping. Like, no offense to the original poster, but you're coping. I know you were really shocked that there were vegans in particular that are like this, but I'm sure after reading the comments, you shouldn't have been that perplexed. This isn't an isolated incident. This is significantly more widespread than you're acting like it is. He is not a single basket case, which again is evident in the comment. Now, she said something that I think is super interesting. The line here, we shouldn't impose our philosophies onto non-human animals who operate completely differently than we do. That line is so powerful and so interesting because that is one of the core key arguments for why veganism shouldn't be expected of humans. It's because there's such a vast differentiating factor from us humans to other animals that allows us morally to justify eating them. Now, I know if there's any vegans watching, you definitely just spit out your vegan milk, but I'm not going to go into details on the whole ethical things here. I've already talked about this stuff millions of times. An analogy I've always used is if you're driving down the road and you accidentally run over a squirrel, you might be like, ah, shit, that sucks. It's unfortunate, poor squirrel, but you move on with your life. Now you do the same thing with the child and it's, oh my God, you get out of the car screaming, are you okay? Oh my God, like calling an ambulance, and everybody freaks out. Everybody loses their mind, including the vegans. Oh, and the incident with the squirrel is not going to put you behind bars, even if you were driving distracted on your phone. Do the same thing with a kid, and well, say goodbye to your freedom. And why is that? Because even naturally, coded in your very DNA, you do not see humans the same way you see other animals. And that's normal, and that's completely fine. It's no different than other species. While bears may occasionally kill their own, and while lions may occasionally kill their own for, power issues and things like that or whatever, generally they live harmonious with each other because they're the same species. But if any other animal rolls up on them, they're food. We're gonna start off tame here before we get to the real heated comments. Wow, I learned a lot reading through people's comments. I didn't realize some vegans' morality extends to their treatment of animals based on whether the animals are carnivorous or not. That seems unnecessarily intense and granular to me, but veganism is clearly a spectrum. Wow, way to justify that. Now here we go. Now we're cooking, right? Can you explain to me how it morally makes sense to save one animal by feeding it many animals? Edit. Just did a quick query for one of the comments down this thread. An owl can eat more than 1,000 mice per year, and an owl can live several decades in captivity. We are taking tens of thousands of mice killed to save that one owl. Pretty insane when you think about it. Is it though? Is it though? Now this person clapped back with a, what's your proposal for the ecosystem to control the population of rodents in the absence of predator species? Rampant habitat destruction followed by mass starvation? At some point you have to watch The Lion King and sing the song. Humans can be vegan, consider harm, because we, in theory, can limit our consumption to the carrying capacity of the world and choose what we eat and supplement as required. Anthropomorphism serves no purpose here. This person responds with, herbivore populations in the wild should be controlled by carnivore populations in the wild. What does any of this have to do with a rescue owl? This person here responds, most raptor species, aka owls, that are brought into a rescue are there because of a human, right? I work in wildlife rescue and almost always the poor thing was shot at, ran over, intentionally attacked. What the hell did the owl do to deserve that? We are capable of ensuring they live and in many cases can be released back into the wild. It wasn't the owl's fault, it was humans, and it's our responsibility to help them. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm not gonna argue it. Now this comment, also a little unhinged in my opinion. If an owl is in captivity, then someone is breeding those mice to feed it. I say wild animals should be left into the wild. If they can't be released because they'll die, well guess what? That is nature. I don't agree with breeding of any kind. Now, these sets of comments here also found quite interesting. Potentially billions of mice are factory farmed in horrendous conditions, carnivorous animals that are cared for. It's quite brutal. And they send a link to some document, some research. And this guy says, Jesus effing Christ, man. There's always more suffering to be unearthed. Owls are amazing. I absolutely love them. I'm glad they exist, but I would never feed one mice. They're natural predators. I'm not. So this person also responds, the whole point of the conversation was that the original poster works as a wildlife rehabber though. So the carnivores temporarily cannot hunt on their own until they're released again. So is the humane thing then to let it starve? If we are going to try to undo some of the severe damage that humans have done to the environment, that involves having to occasionally rehab and care for species that humans have endangered, injured, displaced, etc., I'd argue to be less vegan to only rescue herbivorous creatures and leave all carnivores to suffer and die. Big Monitor responds, which animal do you prioritize though? I absolutely want the owl to live, but I'm not willing to kill a mouse to do it. I don't judge the owl for killing, but I'm not willing to take part. Dude, this right here is crazy. They're responding to this comment here about can of worms being open, and this person says, no, it wasn't. Using worms to feed fish is unethical. Carnivorous fish learn to eat algae in my house or they starve. Anyway, that really wraps up the comments that I wanted to look at. Now it's time for us to actually talk about it. So, I'm not vegan, right? So I'm fully for supporting all animals, right? That's the difference. I don't have this moral dilemma when it comes to animals. I'm not differentiating in that way. What I do differentiate though is animals raised for food versus wild animals versus pets, right? They're all different. Animals raised for food, regardless of what the vegans want to say, is unfortunately, it's necessary for the survival of the human race. Agriculture wasn't some accident. It wasn't some mistake. Animal agriculture was an adaptation for humanity to thrive. You gotta remember, before modern agriculture, humans were not living all that long. I mean, there's been a lot of reasons for why humans have been living longer, but ruling out widespread starvation was a big contributing factor to that. And while it may be selfish to be doing everything you can for humans to live as long as possible, that's naturally what any species is going to do. They're always going to evolve and make choices that benefit them and their species to the best of their ability. Humans are no different. Now, of course, we need to be conscious of the damage that we do to the environment and the damage that we do to other species, and always strive to do things in the least harmful way as possible, which honestly, we don't do that. I know if there's some vegans still watching this, you're like, oh, well, then why not be vegan? It's the least harmful thing as possible. No, it's not. Widespread veganism harms humans. You're trading less harm farm animals for more harm to humans. Now, I'm not here to get into the weeds and the facts of why animal products are necessary for the vast majority of people, because I've already been down this road a bajillion times. Just understand that despite what vegans believe or they try to preach, it's all lies, it's all bullshit. Most people need animal products, full stop, and there's no debating it. But yeah, hating carnivorous animals because they eat other animals is pretty crazy, but at the same time, it seems to be somewhat consistent with certain beliefs of veganism, doing the least amount of harm to animals as possible. Now, if keeping a rescue owl alive requires you to feed it thousands of mice, you're doing more harm to animals. It's inconsistent with the philosophy of veganism. Because by doing that, you yourself are sacrificing thousands of mice for the lives of few animals, which directly goes against the belief of veganism. So while this person comes off as an absolute nut, at least they're logically consistent. Everybody else in these comments that disagree with him are not. They are correct about one thing, to not force your philosophy onto animals. You can't do that. Veganism is a human philosophy. You're correct. However, what that means is you should not own a carnivorous animal. You should not rescue carnivorous animals. You should not feed into any animals that require you to sacrifice others, because then you are doing more harm to animals. And you got to remember as well, where are they getting these mice from? From breeding. They're breeding these mice. This is no different than contributing to a factory farm, right? Like us non-vegans do. except instead of using the mice for yourself to eat, you're giving it to a pet. Which is why there's a lot of vegans that, even though for some reason they adopt carnivorous animals, I guess maybe because they hate them, I don't know, but they then put them on a vegan diet and watch them slowly die. It's because it's like being in a toxic relationship. The I can fix you mentality. They do that with carnivorous animals. They're like, I don't like that you eat meat, so I'm gonna stop you from doing that. I can fix you, even though it's natural and what's healthy for you. And the alternative is definitely going to put you in an early grave. I'm going to do it anyway. It's a very, very disgusting practice, but it is still logically consistent with veganism. Because if you have a cat and say it requires 1,000 mice to feed, obviously you don't actually feed your cat mice, most people don't do that, but let's just say you did. Well, you sacrifice 1,000 mice for your cat, you've done damage to 1,000 mice for the sake of one cat. That becomes extremely hypocritical extremely fast. So I personally think the vegan community should actually be on this guy's side, not for wild animals, but for like captives and rescues and things like that. They shouldn't rescue foxes, shouldn't rescue coyotes, shouldn't rescue wolves, shouldn't rescue any animal that eats other animals, because it's going to require them to pay into factory farms to feed them, or to go out there and kill animals themselves. It just doesn't work. But nobody is surprised that there's this hole of hypocrisy in the vegan community. Everything in the vegan community is full of hypocrisy. Even the very tame vegans that don't try to shove their beliefs down your throat. And, you know, while it's all well and good that they keep to themselves, it's personal to them, so I have no issues with them, there's still logical inconsistencies with what they do as well. Because a lot of those people also go on to raising their children vegan, and I've already talked about how problematic that is, but they don't care. They don't care that there is no research anywhere, no long-term research anywhere that states that it is healthy to raise a child on a vegan diet. In fact, every time you even look into this, it always says, well, there's these risks of deficiencies and you gotta be really careful and make sure your diet is very well planned. What some people don't understand is, well, okay, as long as, you know, they meet all their nutrient goals like we're supposed to, we're gonna be all good. The problem is with blood work only measures the nutrients that are in your blood, which is not the same as what nutrients are being used by your cells or what's in your cells. Your blood work does not tell you that. So even if your child's getting exactly what they need because of all your supplementation, it doesn't mean they're using it, which is why there's a track record of vegan children having nutrient deficiencies. And now a lot of people in the vegan community will say, well, they just did it wrong. No. Chances are they did it exactly how they were supposed to, and they followed their guidelines. They hit their goals for all their nutrients, but they were still deficient. And that's the same thing that applies to adults, but except it's even worse for children because you're still developing. You need those nutrients significantly more than a grown adult does. Adults and children have very different nutritional needs, which I'm sure Health 101 or Parenting 101 would have told you that, but they don't care. And that's one thing that bothers me more than anything. Like, the vegans in the vegan community can talk shit and do this moral superiority thing all day, all night. I don't care. But when it comes to the children, that boils my blood. And I firmly believe that more countries need to make it illegal to feed children under a certain age a vegan diet, because you are fucking up that kid's future. Now, even if you get away with the most common minor issues like bone density or shorter growth, like things like that, what if your kid wants to be an athlete and you've stunted their growth, you've delayed their puberty? Their lower bone density means stress fractures, means they're not going to be cut out to play football like they want to, or to run hurdles like they might want to, or to play volleyball like they might want to, because if they jump too high and land just a little wrong, their ankle's going to shatter. But they know those risks, and they don't care because they're more important and their beliefs are more important than what their eventually fully autonomous child, who will eventually be an adult, may want. I know I've kind of gone off track and that's not really what we're here to talk about, but it does still tie back into the original post. And that's the debate between who you can force a certain diet on or not, and who or what veganism can or shouldn't be applied to. But anyway, that's it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and if you did enjoy. feel free to like and subscribe button. Until next time.